2 boys in grade 2 and 1 in grade 5, and they all attend the local primary school. Well, I'm somebody that's never had a belief in any God and never felt the need to, but it's something that I've always considered to be a private belief. It's not something that I've necessarily needed to advertise or to convince other people to my way of thinking. But yeah, I've been an atheist, and my children know that I don't believe in God, and I've explained to them the reasons why. But I also try to raise them to be free thinkers, and so they're aware that other people have different beliefs, and I say to them that they'll ultimately have to make that choice for themselves. And I also try and teach them to be tolerant and respectful of other people's beliefs. So we talk about the important thing is that people are good people, not what they believe in. Well, we have 3 choices. There's the Christian religious education, or there's instruction in the Baha'i faith, or you can opt the children out. So I've chosen to opt the children out of religious instruction, so the school need to actually provide facilities for all 3. So they have to provide supervision for the Baha'i and the Christian and those that opt out. If you do opt out, then if you don't opt out of it, then you're automatically put into the Christian course, not into the Baha'i. So I opted my children out because I didn't want them going to school and being taught things that I didn't believe were true. And I wanted them to be taught by teachers as opposed to volunteers from the church. So that was the reason why I haven't included them. The principal has told me that that is the Education Department policy, that if you don't formally opt out of religious instruction, then you go to the Christian class. I opted them out at the start, because I think when we put volunteers in the classroom, the children at that age at 5 and 6, they don't discriminate between what's a volunteer and what's a teacher. As far as they're concerned, that's the teacher. My younger son in grade 1 forgot to hand in his form to opt out, so he was put into Christian religious instruction. And he brought home the first day a colouring sheet which said that God made the world. So I said to him, well, that's not what I believe. And he said to me, but why would the teacher say it if it's not true? And it just brought home to me that from his point of view, someone standing up at the front of the class is a teacher, and if they're telling him that, then it must be the truth. And so that was the reason why I didn't want them to be exposed to that. I have no problem with them being taught about religion in an educative way. I think it in fact has a lot of value to learn about other people's beliefs and what the Christian stories are and what the Buddhists believe and all the different religions. I think that would be really valuable, but I think it should be taught as part of the curriculum and by teachers. I have a real problem with children being segregated based on their parents' religious beliefs. Even though I've been an atheist all my life, it's never been an issue. I've never had to raise it in my workplace or in school or at university. It wasn't until my son started primary school that suddenly it was made to be an issue, and we were treated differently because of those beliefs of mine. And I really felt that discrimination. Being opted out, my oldest child, when he started in prep, he was originally put at the back of the classroom. There was him and a Jewish girl and I think one other student. So they were put at the back of the classroom with some Lego. And it became fairly clear to me that he was just sitting there listening to the lesson because he was coming home and talking about the things that they'd learnt. So I thought, well, that's not really addressing the issue. So I went up to the school and talked to them about that. He was then put into the computer cubicle at the back of the room, so he could still see all his classmates, but he couldn't hear what they were talking about anymore. And that image really stays with me, that from that age, and they're little kids who have just started school and they're just building that connectedness with their group, and they're sitting in the back of this glassed-in cubicle, separated from the rest of the class. And after that, one of my other children was in the corridor for all of Year 1 during religious instruction time. So he was sitting out there, so everybody else is in the classroom, so he's done that. So they try and find somewhere to put them, but there's sometimes they go to other classes and so on. So that's been their experience. And the other difficulty with it is that they're not given any constructive educational activity during that time. And as the children get older, that becomes an issue. That my son in grade 4 asked could he work on his school project during that time, and he was told no, he couldn't, because that might disadvantage the children in the Christian class. So I at that point felt really frustrated that I'm sending my son to school to be told he can't work on his schoolwork because that might disadvantage the other kids. It's a really discriminatory system, I think. It hasn't been a big problem for them. They tend to take it in their stride. They do what they're told and get along with it. I think probably the only complaint has been from my older son, who's becoming frustrated at having that wasted time at school, that he's interested in learning and he's very aware now that he's being sent to just sit and waste time for that period of time, that he's restricted in what he can do. But they haven't been complaining about it. For me, though, I think the issue for them has been that they've been forced into a position where they're having to defend themselves as atheists, which is not something that I wanted for them. I wanted them to come to that in their own time. But because they were separated from the class, the other children wanted to know why, and the discussions happened. So I think it's really perpetuated that us and them division that I would have liked to see a much more inclusive environment at school. So I don't think there's any place really for religious instruction in a secular school system. As I said before, I think there's no problem with educating kids about religion. In fact, I think there's real benefits to doing that, but it should be done in an inclusive way where all children are treated equally, of equal value. And so I don't think it should be run during school hours. I think I completely respect parents' right to educate their children as they see fit and to instruct them in their faith, but I think that's something that should be done outside of the school system. They have the churches or the temples or the synagogues they can go to. If the parents were really asking for it to be run at the school, then I think it needs to be outside of school hours so that children are not being segregated and discriminated against. This is something that's been a long time coming for me because my oldest son is in grade 5 now. When he initially started school, my thought was, well, if he's going to be separated during this time, it'd be nice if he had a secular alternative, maybe a course of ethics or something like that. So originally that was the track that I took, to try and get him something to do where he was learning about my sort of worldviews during that time. And that took a number of years. Ultimately, the Education Department said that we couldn't do that because the course we were proposing was not a religion, and so we weren't allowed to instruct them. So over time my frustration with the system was growing, and I was very aware of feeling discriminated against. That previous to that my atheism really hadn't been an issue and hadn't impacted on my life, but here my children were missing out, were being sent to school and not being educated. So I was getting increasingly frustrated with that. So an action was taken to argue that the current system is discriminatory, and that went before the Human Rights and Equal Opportunities Commission and is now going before VCAT. So we're arguing, that the current system discriminates against any non-Christian parents and children, so including atheists and other religions. So we're waiting to see how that goes.